Well, hey, Northside, welcome to this next video. Hey, Northside, welcome to this next GO21 video. In this video, we're going to feature Rodney and Ann Anderson, our global workers in northern Brazil. And we're excited to share their story with you. The goal of these videos is simple. We want to call you to awareness. We want to call you to prayer. We want to call you to action. Awareness of what's going on, just so that you're in the know about what's happening around the world. It's a call to prayer, so that you will actually get on your knees and help to advance the kingdom through the ministry of prayer. And then a call to action. There are things that we can do, even if we never set foot on foreign soil. Now, you'll notice as you watch this video that there's going to be a change of scenery partway through the video. And that's just because as we were filming, we had some interruptions. And when we apologized to Rodney and Ann for having to make this change, they're global workers in Brazil. They get it. This is just part of their MO. And so it was no big deal to them, but that's why you're going to see the change. And we are excited to share with you the story of Rodney and Ann Anderson.
Hi, my name is Rodney Anderson, and this is my wife, Ann. We've been on the field in Brazil for a little over 27 years now. My first Sunday at Northside was Ed Holt's second Sunday back at the old building, and I am forever grateful both to Northside and to Ed Holt for introducing me to the Restoration Movement and learning about the Bible and sending me to Ozark Bible College or Ozark Christian College, where I received the training and learned so much about the Bible and about sharing the gospel message with other people and the importance of sticking with the Bible and just the Bible. So many of the divisions and the disruptions in Christianity have come because people have left that to the side, or even if they believe that, they've added on, well, my church teaches, or my church believes, or my denomination is, or I was taught as a child. And that happens to all of us, myself included. And one of the really great things, both at here at Northside and then at Ozark, was learning to look at the Bible and let the Bible make the final decision, and then moving, changing, being willing to recognize, hey, I'm not perfect, I haven't arrived yet. And so I have to change the things that are wrong if I want to improve, if I want to draw closer to God, if I want to be more accurate in my preaching and teaching. I have to be willing myself to move and change to conform to what the scriptures say as I learn more and more. We give other people the same right to not be perfect that I give myself, and the same right to change and adapt, and the time to change and adapt. One of the things my wife has taught me is that not everybody else has spent the years studying some of the things you've spent the years studying, so you can't necessarily expect them to change overnight just because you say something or show something. Even if it is or appears obvious to you, somebody else might not have had the same amount of time to think about that or to absorb it. And so that's one of the things she's taught me I've had to learn.
Well, I grew up in a ministry family, and my extended family is heavily involved in ministry and missions. And we always had missionaries in our home. So ministry and missions were just a normal life choice, and I'm very thankful for that Christian and ministry-oriented upbringing. I'm a musician, and I went to Ozark Christian College as a music major, not really knowing how God intended to use me, but knowing that I loved Him, I loved music, and that was going to be how I was going to start and try to be open to His leading for my life. I really became focused on missions during Missions Emphasis Week at Ozark Christian College. They have missionaries from around the world who are on campus, and you can visit with them and hear their stories. There's booths set up from all over the world. Everything on campus is focused towards missions. And it was that week that, when I really look back upon it, I always understood intellectually the importance of missions. But that was the week when my heart just kind of broke for how many places don't have the gospel or don't have enough workers as compared to the United States, where we really have a lot of ministry workers and a lot of access to the gospel. So that week was the week that I told the Lord, I don't know where you want me. I still don't know where you want me, but I am committing myself to missions in whatever way that you choose to use me. And it was also during that week that there was a booth, a missions booth set up in the lobby of my dorm from a young guy who had been an intern in Brazil, and his name was Rodney Anderson. And I spent some time looking at the pictures of his booth, and a missionary in Brazil named Bill Moreland, who has since gone on to glory, came over and spent a lot of time with me in the booth, and I found out later that he told Rodney, "Hey, look at that girl. She's interested in missions in Brazil. You need to talk to her." And on our first date, we had a very interesting discussion after we were walking along by the creek that runs out behind Ozark Christian College, and he said to me, "If we should continue to date and get married," okay, that freaked me out. This was a first date and I was a freshman. "But if we should continue to date and get married, you need to know that I'm going to be a missionary in Brazil. And so you need to be prepared for that." So I took a breath and I looked at him and I said, "Well, you need to know that I can live anywhere in the world, but I'm a music major and I need a piano." So our cards were kind of on the table, and we continued to date, and he is the kind of servant, Christ-like man that I wanted to spend my life with, and so his choice of Brazil became my choice for Brazil, and I have been very thankful for both of those choices.
Looking especially at this last year at the way COVID has changed things, much the same as COVID has changed things here, it's also changed things in Brazil. Everybody's afraid if you come to the door, they're afraid that you're going to give them COVID. So how do you deal with that? The evangelism calls I was making, I can't make. The different activities, the group activities as a church got shut down. And so there were a lot of things the things that we had been doing on a regular basis with several of the churches were no longer possible even to do. We just had to try different things to see what would work. We began working with trying to live stream. We began doing some more stuff on social media. We're in the process of trying to develop some of the footage that I've videoed over the years into usable teaching times via the internet. I would like to build up a library of lessons and good solid biblical preaching and teaching, some of the song services maybe, so that the smaller congregations that don't have access to a lot of things can use the internet to access some of that. But it's really been a change, because with the COVID, even as whether it's the technology, learning the new technologies to be able to live stream, to be able to film, or whether it's just learning how do you deal with people who are afraid once things start to open up. A couple of the good things that I've seen come out of this, COVID really seemed to shut down not just the society in the churches, but the superficial side of the churches. I've seen a lot of growth towards a more mature Christianity in our churches. I am seeing in many of those a return to a more scriptural preaching, a return to a more solid, we really need to take care of those who are, the people that can't work and are needy. We have to help them. We have to take care of them.
I think a lot of people have asked us and do want to know exactly, more specifically, how COVID has affected our area, because different places have had different levels of isolation and lockdown. So I'll just speak to that. We did have 2 weeks of absolute lockdown in early March when nothing functioned.
I will add in an explanation to that, or part of that. When she talks about a 2 week of shutdown, I went out to take some food baskets to some poor people, and the police stopped me to know why I was out of the house during the shutdown. And they let me go on when they saw that it was the food baskets. But that type of a shutdown, I mean, they were questioning people.
But the churches were allowed even then to put a filming crew into their building and film and transmit. It was small. So the churches were never completely shut down in our city, and we are grateful to the mayor of our city for that. Fairly early on, they allowed churches and to have 40 people present. So the first Sunday that we were able to have 40 people. We did 2 services and asked people to come to one or the other, morning and evening. And as I was looking out, I was on the piano and leading worship. As I was looking out, you just saw tears running down people's faces. It was so joyful to be present with each other again, but it was also so strange to be in a large auditorium with only 40 people all spaced out. So it was, we're happy, these are happy tears, but these are sad tears because this isn't like I wanted it to be. But it was a start. And now every church is allowed to have present whatever their sanctuary can hold, socially distanced appropriately. So as far as the churches go, that means in our church we can have 100 people present at a service. And so that feels more like, okay, we've got a decent number of people in the church. It feels more like community. And we do have a limited children's ministry functioning, socially distanced, and they're not requiring that. Yes, they are. The children are still required to wear masks. And this is where it's a little bit difficult because children naturally, they want to rub shoulders and they want to touch each other. But this has been going on for over a year, so kids have figured this out too. The 2 praise words that come to my mind are mercy and generosity. I have seen God's mercy in so many areas. Just for one, globally, the death toll is not what we were led to expect it would be, and I think that is mercy from the Lord. In our city, we live in a city of 200,000 people. It's the largest city in our state, and it is the hub for both education and health care for hundreds of miles around. So the big fear at the beginning of COVID was that our hospitals would be overrun, that there would not be enough beds for people who needed them, that there would not be enough of the intubation machines. I think that was kind of a global fear, but this was a real thing that could have happened in our town because everybody was going to come to Araguaína, and we knew that. And before COVID, there were never any extra hospital beds in the state-run hospital, so it was already past capacity, so this was a real thing. But mercy, as far as I know, there has not been a single COVID patient that did not have a bed when they needed it, and there has never been anybody who needed to be intubated that could not get that done in Araguaína. And that is mercy, because that could have been a real problem. We've seen mercy in the very poorest people. The Brazilian government, just like the American government, offered a stimulus, but it was only for the very poor. But that stimulus was sometimes more money than they regularly had in a month. I know a couple who were able to build an outhouse. Okay, they did not an indoor bathroom. They were able to build their outhouse because they had a stimulus check. I mean, things like that are very humbling, as well as just showing that God was taking care. And then the other word is generosity, because God has been generous and God's people have been generous. Just on the transmission side, the church we work with has a membership of about 250 people, and attendance between 250 and 300 non-COVID. There have been Sundays when we had live stream views of over 1,000 people. And we are still regularly having views hitting 400 and 500. So in what we saw as a barrier and a problem, all of a sudden God just used in a way that we still can't quite wrap our heads around. So God, there are no barriers for our God. There really aren't. And the things that seem like setbacks to us are just opportunities for Him to say, I am greater, and I'm still working. So that was a generosity of God to everyone involved. But also God's people have been very generous just in meeting needs. A lot of people were lost income and sometimes lost all jobs, and yet you only had to say, either online or the church pulpit, we've got 3 needy families we want to gather food for, and there would be 20 food baskets in the church lobby by the end of the week. There just wasn't any, we don't have enough to help. There was just just tell us, and we're there. I know a number of families just in our church who they just now make it a habit. When they go to the grocery store, you can purchase prepackaged food baskets with the rice, the beans, the spaghetti, enough food for a family for probably 2 weeks. And it's just part of their grocery budget. They buy 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on their possibilities. And that wasn't the case before COVID. So God's being generous, God's people are being generous, and I believe that be in the hands and feet of Jesus is reflecting very well on the gospel and the church as a whole and on the Lord.
Well, this last term in Brazil was the term that the last of our children went away to college, and so we became officially empty nesters. So whether it's with us or with other missionaries, one thing that's important to us is our families. One of the things that Northside can do is to we can provide an address and get the name or the address of some of the missionary kids or the missionary families and say, hey, we know your folks, or we've heard about your folks are serving in Brazil or wherever, and just write a letter of encouragement. Hey, we just wanted you to know that we appreciate what your family has done, and we want you to know that we're praying for you.
And I will just add to that to clarify, all four of our children our grown children are living in the United States, and that's part of, we're a long ways from them. And we will leave contact information with Corey and with the office, and so anybody who would just kind of like to check up on them and say, how are you doing? That would make us very happy. That would just relieve our hearts. We do put out a newsletter about 4 times a year, and that contact information can also be had from the Northside office. If you're interested in seeing what it's like to live on the mission field, please come visit us or go visit one of other Northside's missionaries. Obviously, maybe right now you can't do that, but probably in 6 months this will be more possible. So we would love to have you. You're very welcome. And you can ask Corey and Leah, and you can ask other families in the church who have been to visit us. We'll take care of you, and you will have a great time, and you'll see what a missionary's life is like. So very welcome to do that.
All right, who's ready to go to Brazil? Thanks for watching this GO21 installment, and I just want to wrap up with one quick story. In the fall of 2019, my wife and I, along with Charles and Debbie Vandevert, had the privilege of going to Araguaia, Brazil with Rodney and Ann, spending some time there. While we were there, I met a man named Marquise. Marquise is one of the worship leaders there at the main church building there in Araguaia, and I could tell the first time I saw him that as he was leading worship, I could tell that he was blind. He was on the stage playing his guitar and singing, and you could just see the joy in his face as he was leading God's people in song. A few nights later, I had the privilege of having dinner with Marquise. We were having some pizza. We were out under the starlit sky at an outdoor cafe, and I was fully enjoying not just the meal, but the time to hear his story as he went on and on about what a privilege it was to lead God's people in song, and what an honor it was for him to be used like that and to serve the Lord. And it reminded me of what a privilege it is. Sometimes we need to hear the stories of fellow believers in order to gain a better perspective, a more clear perspective on our own story. And I hope that that's happened for you during our time together. I want to encourage you to connect with Rod and Ann Anderson. You can do that by stopping by our Go Wall in the main lobby of our worship center. You can get some information there. Or along the bottom of the screen, you can see ways that you can contact the church office and connect with me, because I'd be happy to pass along some information to you. We have an opportunity to pray for the work that God is doing in Brazil. We have an opportunity to pray for our beloved brother and sister, Rodney and Ann Anderson. Take some time to lift them up in prayer right now. Take some time to reach out to their kids and write letters of encouragement. As we make disciples, let's continue to connect people to Christ and to one another. We'll see you next time.